is this a reaction to a more conciliatory Donald Trump?
Well, I think he was more conciliatory in tone. He did check all the boxes for his base in terms of, immigration, the economy, tax reform, et cetera. But I think the overall environment in Washington just remains so bitterly divided. And you could see that from just the reactions of the Democrats in the chambers there, sitting on their hands, didn't shake his hand when he came in. So it really is still, I think, overall, the environment is not very good in Washington.
So what would you say were some of the more controversial points he made, especially when it comes to trade and foreign policy, which, let's be honest here, markets, a lot of them were holding their breath. They were worried that there would be more protectionism, more of this America first. But we didn't get as much as some would have feared, did we?
Yeah, there wasn't so much of that, but, he did make a very strong reference to, fair and reciprocal trade, and he specifically mentioned intellectual property, and that's clearly directed at the Chinese. So, he did talk about, pursuing bilaterals. He didn't mention them specifically by name, but there was nothing really inflammatory, or there were no bombshells that he dropped, but he stayed on message pretty much.
I'm just looking at the transcript of the speech, and infrastructure, of course, one of the more potent themes of that conversation. Give us a bit more context as to how likely it is that we're going to see any progress made on that, because we heard big announcements on infrastructure projects when he came into office initially. With the kind of tension that you just pointed out that exists in Congress and across the aisle, is there any chance that any of this is going to get done this year or even next?
That's a very interesting question. He did mention that the infrastructure projects would be a combination of state and local as well as federal money. He emphasized that there would be private businesses also heavily involved. And that brings with it a great deal of controversy. You guessed it, right along party lines, right? The Democrats are more suspicious of more private investment and involvement, with big business locally as opposed to getting funding directly from the feds. So, I think it's a positive environment overall for the economy. I mean, everything he touched on, he talked about tax reform. That was good. He talked about low unemployment. And, despite the political division, the markets are going gangbusters. So, again, it's very, very difficult to predict anything with this administration. And I think the infrastructure, it's going to be different state by state, municipality by municipality.
There are a few things, Alex, that he didn't mention, and I'm looking here at points along the lines of the ongoing special investigation around possible collusion with Russia, the issue of the national debt, how he's going to pay for a lot of these projects. What stood out to you in terms of the missing link in what was otherwise a quite diversified speech?
Yeah, like I said, he covered just about everything. I think if there was a missing link, he didn't say much about Russia. He did name them, interestingly enough, as an adversary, potential adversary, along with the Chinese. But, in terms of discussing further sanctions, in terms of discussing, national security when it comes to intervention in our political system, he didn't mention that. He did mention Afghanistan briefly. Now, Afghanistan is our nation's longest-running war in history, and things aren't going particularly well there right now. We're seeing flare-ups of violence. The government in Afghanistan there is not managing the situation well. Didn't go there in that speech. So again, coming back to the original point of this partisanship in Washington, that's not going anywhere. That is going to remain a reality for everything, going forward.